Welcome to Biz Dev Live. This is Cameron Toth. This is the Biz D with the C. I am so excited to bring you Erica Maurer today. She is just fresh off the Event Planner Expo 2020 with such people as Daymond John and Kevin Harrington and Heather Monahan. Great speakers. I actually really enjoyed some of the names that weren't headlines. Really excited to talk to you about that and her career, building out event departments for venues. She's a licensed therapist. I'm going to give you the whole bio right after the Biz Dev thing.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Erica Maurer is a veteran in the events, marketing, and hospitality industry, an entrepreneur, owner, creator, event planner, speaker, and licensed therapist. She's a partner at EMRG Media. EMRG Media is a leading event marketing, production, and creative agency. Her agency is known to be innovative and creators of custom event experiences for clients in the virtual world, as well as in-person event experiences. She is one of the partners and producers of the Event Planner Expo that just completed its 8th year. The Event Planner Expo is the leading trade show for the events, marketing, and hospitality industry. This event went from a 3-day, 4,000 people in-person expo to a virtual one due to the pandemic. She and her team fully adapted their business when the pandemic hit to service the community, including both the corporate, social, and nonprofit sectors with custom virtual event experiences. Her clients include BuzzFeed, Columbia Records, Robin Hood Foundation, Smile Train, PitchBook, Twitter, and Google, to name some. For folks that maybe have similar backgrounds, Erica Maurer is a graduate of Tufts University and received her master's from Columbia University in social work and business. Thank you so much for being on the show, Erica.
Thank you.
So I'm so excited to really get into, you just put on an incredible event last week. Let us know like everything. Tell us how the experience was. I know you pivoted big time. I know we were just talking before we jumped into live. The expectation was that this event was going to be a live event. Obviously, it needed to pivot virtual. Talk to us about that experience and some of the highlights.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. And just to kind of give a little bit of an overview, every year we do our annual trade show. It's, the Event Planner Expo, which you mentioned, and it's for the events, marketing, and hospitality industry. So this year, we were moving forward to doing it in person like we always do. We had secured Daymond John as one of our keynotes, which we did take virtual. We actually also had Jesse Itzler, who was also our secondary keynote, which we had envisioned taking him as well onto the stage. But then, the pandemic hit and we had to realize, okay, well, things aren't going to be what they used to be. And we adapted. We basically said, okay, our community needs us. It turned out that in March, I did a lot of outreach to our corporate clients, our social clients, our nonprofit clients, and said, how are you guys? Like, what's going on? And I noticed that they were all really not okay. They were trying to adjust. They were dealing with the stress of their job. A lot of them had shifted their positions. They had to take on a lot more in their company because of the stress level of the pandemic and so forth. And they were really saying to us, we need you to do your event, which is not what I expected to hear. And so we reached out also to the people who normally are in the trade show, our sponsors, our clients, our vendor partners, our speakers, and so forth. And they also said, look, we need some guidance. And so from that, my partner and I said, okay, well, we have to figure this out. And we kind of dove right in March and April and started to figure out how to pivot and adapt and incorporate engagement stuff for the virtual world. And that's really the story behind how we, migrated into taking it virtual, was that we didn't want to sit on the sideline. We wanted to be, in the game, and we wanted to kind of be leading the game. So we jumped in and produced the event, and the event was last week. It was 3 days, Tuesday through Thursday. We had 100 speakers, which was a really big task. We had 75 vendor partners who, exhibited. We had days of networking and so forth. So there was a lot of pieces to it, and I'm really proud that our team was able to step up and that we were able to do something that really allowed people to come together, in essence, at a time that we're fully separated. So I think that was really important.
No, absolutely. Talk to us about the process, because I know you really pulled off a successful event, brought a lot of people together. I have copious notes from watching the speakers. Talk to us about the process of putting something like that together, reviewing all of the technology and apps, because I know that's got to be, such a large conversation. Obviously, you have goals, and then aligning those goals with the technology must have been a big part of the conversation leading up to the expo.
No, 100%. We basically were approached by, I want to say, 50 to 100 different technology companies. There was a lot of them that were either new to the market or were trying to kind of adapt in the market. And we took a lot of demos for sure. And my partner and I just said, what do we want to get out of this? Like, what do we need to provide the community with? And that's kind of how we honed in. We said, okay, we need to provide education. We need to provide motivation. We need to provide inspiration, because people are either, and this is something I mentioned before, but I think it might be important just to people tuning in. People were in 3 buckets, right? So the way I look at it, there's a 3-bucket approach. So bucket 1 is you still don't believe that we're in the pandemic, and you feel like the world's going to come back and you're just sleeping, right? You're just going to wait. So you're just sitting there, kind of thinking that the world will come back. Bucket 2 is you're an event planner, your job does not exist, or your job is adapting and you're trying to take your transferable skills, and what do you need for that, right? And then bucket 3 is that your business has fully changed or fully pivoted, or you might have closed your business and starting a new one. And so for that, it was really important that we tried to focus on all of those 3 sectors, because that's what people needed. So in the past, so we've been doing this for 8 years. In the past, what we've done is we've really focused on the event planning side, right? Because it's an event planning, marketing, and hospitality trade show. However, event planners can't be event planners right now, right? They have to be chameleons. So what we really tried to do is we tried to incorporate a platform that would allow a very heavy content base, a very heavy education base, because we realized that what people need were tools that they might not normally be using in their, in their toolkit, if you will. As event planners, we're used to doing things in person, and taking things virtually, comes with a lot of challenges. And the fact that we're now in a digital age, like Cameron, you said you launched this, in March, right?
Yes.
So that was kind of right in the forefront of when things were adjusting. Now, a lot of people might say, Cameron, how did you do this? You have a staffing agency. How did you come up with, or how are you comfortable doing this? That took you pushing through barriers and also taking a risk, right? So what we wanted to incorporate in the trade show with the technology was to show people they could take a risk, they could push through, they could succeed, and align them with very big thought leaders to speak and talk about different topics and provide different, skills and insight on how to do that. So that was one piece that we really wanted to incorporate into the trade show. And then second, we wanted to incorporate networking. So networking piece, which is really important because obviously we're now not allowed to be able to be in person and see people. So this is kind of our new networking engagement, right? Like we're talking right now, we're live, we're, on an app platform. So that was a piece that was important. And so we wanted to incorporate networking component to allow people to connect. And then lastly, we wanted to incorporate something that would allow vendor partners to be able to exhibit, to be able to get their brand in front of planners, decision makers, corporate executives, HR marketers, creators, and so forth, and brand managers. And those were the 3 things that we really were looking for when we took the dive to kind of in the leap to do our trade show.
I want to get into kind of the show itself and all that, but I want to kind of hold off on that conversation to talk about what does the future look like, because you've learned some lessons. I know you have another virtual event coming up, so I want to save that, and we can talk about that towards the end. But if you want to mention it now, just to talk about it, so that we had a couple mentions of it. What are the things that you learned that you're moving forward with that you're going to take into the next events?
So we actually are rolling out a community, events community, which was something that we've been talking about prior. So we're going to be doing a membership community, which will allow industry professionals to connect. So that's something that we find to be very important. What we've incorporated is really the networking ability, which we think is critical, and also the educational component. So I think that those two pieces are like the high level you must have at any event. And it's something that allows people to connect and learn and feel that they're kind of still forging new relationships, building their Rolodex, garnering new business. I think that those two pieces are really critical with everything we do.
So, because I know plans are probably already underway for next year's expo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one event ends and the next one already is underway. Do you guys have some post meetings already about like, all right, what went really well, what went not so well, and what you're bringing towards next year?
So we actually had our contract for this year had been booked, because we always book right after we conclude our prior year. So we already have our 2021 date. The venue basically said, we're not giving you back your deposit. And in reality, there was other things that we wanted to focus on than arguing about that. So we actually rolled our last year's contract into 2021. We're hoping that everything will be back together in the world. And there will be a virtual component too. So whether that looks like what it normally looked like.
And that's kind of what I want to get at, right? Because I think this is the new norm in the sense of, because I want to hear about some of the successful things, because a lot of people have pivoted virtual, right? And when it's well done, or when you're executing well, what that can do is you can bring a lot more people into the umbrella. And one of the things that I think is I've always admired, because I've attended the last at least 3 years. I was circulating that photo with Barbara Corcoran. I think that was from 2018. Last year, you had Gary Vee, which I got to tell you, just the opportunity, because I consume so much of Gary Vaynerchuk's content. One of the main reasons I started up Biz Dev Live was a lot of his words and his approach and an understanding that you can do this. And I appreciate him pumping me up. And so I attended last year, and it's an interesting thing. And I don't think people quite get this about virtual. I know going back to, 2010s, 11, I remember having this conversation with my local MPI Westfield chapter. Like, we can stream this stuff, and it's not going to kill our attendance. It's going to grow our attendance. We've had that conversation over again as we were hosting a weekly virtual networking meeting, and people feeling like it's going to take away from, and I'm like, we have people from San Francisco attending. We have people from Texas attending. This is not taking away from our audience. The people that wouldn't show up locally wouldn't show up anyways, because it wouldn't fit into their schedule. Like, you can bring more people into your brand, your product, your umbrella if you open this up. So talk to me about attendance, how many people attended, where did people attend from, and then that I'm assuming that has to be the reason that going forward you're going to keep some of these virtual options.
Well, I think that depending on how the world is, in the sense of like whether there's a virus cure, or whether there isn't one, I think will definitely dictate how we can proceed in like the real world. And that's how I call it, is like the real world. Yeah. Because reality is we were offered the ability to do the event this year in person. Actually, the venue really wanted us to do it in person, and we absolutely said no, because we weren't comfortable from a safety perspective, right? So whether next year looks like this, or whether it's a modified version of this, it's not going to, in my opinion, allow us to bring together our 4,000, 5,000 people in a building. I just don't see that being realistic. So with that being said, I think that a virtual element is here to stay. I think that people need to dive into it and get comfortable with it. And if they're not comfortable with it, find a partner who can allow them to be comfortable with it. I'll give you an example. From doing our trade show every year, we were approached by a very large chamber of commerce to do their annual trade show, which has always been in person, always been at the Hilton, virtually. And they said point blank, that's not something that we understand yet. So can you do it with us? So we're going to produce that. So I think that piece is really important. You don't have to understand all aspects of it, but you do need to think about that, right? In person has a unique proposition, if you will, because you can adjust things in real life in person. You cannot adjust on the fly with a virtual element. So you really have to overthink and like triple analyze every single variable that you may need to cover, because you can't literally go up. Like I can't go up to you, Cameron, and say, hey, let me adjust this for you. You can't do that, right? It's a virtual element. So I think that's really important to have. And then secondly,
and to lay some context on that, somebody's got a table at the expo and they don't like the placement, or they don't, there's something wrong with the electricity. You can get somebody to fix it, right? Versus, my camera isn't working or my computer isn't working. There's nothing, I'm not there to plug in your computer and turn it off and turn it back on for you, right? Yeah,
100%. It's a totally different. Yeah, it's a totally different, troubleshooting element, right? So there's a lot more work actually that goes into virtual planning.
Yeah, and I heard it when you said 50 to 100 vendors in terms of like trying to work, because I know one of the things that sort of helps with the business model, and I love talking about business models, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, as people are putting things together, how to make all this work. So I'm going to make some assumptions. I know it's your business, so I don't know how much you want to clarify for us or not. But I mean, in terms of making money, you're getting some money from attendees. You're getting money from, I would say, the bulk of money from people that want to present and market at this show to the attendees. And I know there's always been a great drive, and I've always been super impressed with every year. I was sort of trying to get at this earlier, the outreach that you put out there to everybody, amount of emails, the amount of social media, bringing in, as this year I was playing one of the social influencers. Thank you. Yeah. That kind of role. But you have so much outreach every single year to make sure that the event is well attended. And I've attended BizBash for a number of years before I started attending the Event Planner Expo, and it was night and day. You guys were doing new things. There was more variety of not to diss BizBash, but for New York City, to keep it fresh, to keep it live, to bring event planners together, to bring really good content into it. You guys were killing it, and you killed it again this year. And I really appreciated that. And you brought attendees out where, other events, their attendance is dwindling. You guys put on the full court press every year. So I want to talk about that, things
Sure.
that actually bring in the money that make all that work. Because I know it was a lot of work.
I mean, I definitely appreciate that. I mean, I think for us, our background, just to like digress for a second, myself and my business partner, we come from hospitality and from producing events in like restaurants and lounges. Like we're marketers, right? So my business partner specifically is a very big marketer. So with that comes the strength of like understanding who.
Are you talking about Mario?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Mario is like a true business marketer, right? And I'm more of an event person. So when you take those different perspectives and you put it together, the reason why we created the trade show was actually not something that we had initially thought about doing. We were going to do a different kind of trade show for the hospitality and restaurant business, because that's something like we represent, hundreds of spaces where we help them market and bring in, people and drive business and kind of really kind of have that side down pat. And about 8 years ago, probably like actually 10 years ago, I don't think we started it right when we started to talk about it, but about 10 years ago, people came to us and said, we're really tired of going to a hotel ballroom and going to a show that looks like everything else, where there's tables and everything is very cookie cutter. We really would like to see something different. And, my partner said, we could do that. Let's think about how to do that. So I think the fact that the reason why our event is so different and unique is because we really take that personality with it. We take the elements of excitement from a nightclub, right? We take the elements of excitement from a massive corporate event. We take the elements and excitement from all the years of doing events and being like producers and incorporate that so that it's not stuffy. And that was really something that we wanted to incorporate and really have that be like the footprint of it, because we didn't want people to say, oh, it's just another trade show, or I'm just going and all the booths look the same, right? So the evolution of our trade show is like, I think the first year we had maybe 50 booths. I think last year we had probably 200. We created cool VIP lounges, things that you would get in a unique situation that doesn't normally become included in a trade show. So we kind of started to incorporate other elements. And that, I think, is where the differential came. And then people started to say, oh, wow, this is really unique. Oh, wow, this isn't the same as what everything else is. So I think that was the real important driving piece. And then, for this year, just to, digress a little bit about, selling tickets and stuff like that, we gave a lot of tickets to our community, complimentary, because our community was hit. And so this year's model was really changed. It was all about education. It was all about teaching and giving back to our community. And it was like, if you can't afford to come, or if you're having a situation and you need help, we're there for you. So we really were focused on giving to our community and showing them that we're there, so that if they needed something, we could be a support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, for the folks that are bringing the revenue into your organization, that full court press, I mean, I've definitely given thought to, and I'm sure in the future, as you are holding these events, having a booth down there, because the people are there. I mean, that's what these kind of events are about. And sometimes I feel like organizations forget that, they're about getting the money from the, sponsors and exhibitors, and they don't remember that the whole point of this whole thing is that you're bringing the people so that they can actually see and enjoy these things. I'm going to try to throw up some photos of some of the past events here. But these amazing expos where you got to see people. I know things that stand out in my memory are people making cocktails with smoke coming out, and entertainers and magicians on the floor, and all of that coming together with education and food and hospitality. I really appreciate those elements and just taking care of people and providing that hospitality feel to it. Talk to me a little bit about your background and why you got passionate about doing all this kind of stuff. I also want to talk to you about the building out the event departments of venues, because I think that's something that for anybody that's a venue or looking for another kind of thing to add to their repertoire or reason to contact you would be really interesting.
For sure. I mean, basically my background is, I went to, short story, I went to Columbia, grad, and I was there, and, I realized it wasn't necessarily my passion as how I thought it was going to be. And I was working, part-time actually for, Mario, who's now my partner. And I realized that was actually the direction I wanted to go. And, he had a different partner at the time. Long story short, I wound up kind of like working my way up, and he and I became business partners, and we brought like a different sensibility together. I think that with partnerships, you can't be the same person. Otherwise you wouldn't need them. So he's a really great, like, forward thinker. He's the idea person. He always comes up with really great concepts. And I was really like the producer, the hands, and feet on the ground, being able to really create these customized experiences and really hold people's hands. And I think that's the piece that like people really need, especially even now. Now it's even more important. You have to even be more diligent, but putting that personal attention was really important. And, over the years, we dealt with restaurants, we dealt with nightclubs, we dealt with event spaces. We have a venue guide, book that basically we did for about 14 years that we're actually bringing back as an ebook. And it allows the different restaurants and venues and spaces and exhibitors and vendors to be able to reach in front of people. So we really kind of took the creativity and all the different elements. And I think the most important piece, which you actually touched upon, was we listened to what people said. So as people would come back to us, and when I say people, clients, vendors, maybe our friends, other business owners, we would be brainstorming, and then we would incorporate those elements. And I think that that's how your business grows, is by incorporating those things and kind of keep adjusting and keep growing. And that's a big piece of that.
Do you want to talk about any of the numbers on the event, or maybe some of your favorite speakers? I'm really interested in some of the details from the event and some of the highlights that you can give us in terms of, how many countries attended or stuff like that. Do you have some of that data to pull from for the Event Expo?
Yeah, I mean, normally when we did it in person, we had people coming in from South Africa, London, Florida, California, DC, Connecticut, Jersey, but that's like not that far away. So we had people like that. And we also had people from like Australia. So what would happen is we would actually have to, besides planning the trade show, we would curate hotel blocks for them. So we would actually have to create, okay, this is where you can stay. Here are 5 different vetted out hotels that are going to give us prorated rates so that you can enjoy your experience at the trade show.
Which is challenging in New York City.
Right.
For anybody that has sponsored someplace else.
Right. And we wanted to be competitive, right? We didn't want someone to feel, oh, I bought a ticket and now I have to spend $1,000 a night to come in and fly in, because that would be cost prohibitive, right? So what we had to do was we would come up with 3 or 5 different hotels. We'd vet it. We'd come up with, cross analysis, location, what kind of vibe do they offer, what kind of level of execution, how close will they be, and then also price, affordability, who is willing to work with us. And we would curate this list and we would offer it to those people that are traveling in. And then on top of that, we actually would create an opening party. So normally, right, I call it the real world, we would do our kickoff event at Spin. And Spin is really engaging. It's a gaming element. You could do ping pong, you could play different aspects. It's really, really fun. And that would be like a nice icebreaker. And that gave people who were flying in, who normally when they fly in, they would get the 3-day pass, right? Because they wanted to experience all of New York and they wanted to experience all of the trade show because they're flying in. So that would give them the ability to actually meet people in person prior to the next day. And the next day was always what we called the education day. So the last year we had it at 92nd Street Y. This year we were supposed to have it at 92nd Street Y. And I call that like our true education, immersive kind of experience. Like you mentioned, we had Gary V, right? He was excited to be part of it. We were excited to have him. Guests were excited. And that was something that was really important. The year before that, as you had mentioned, we had Barbara Corcoran. Now, those 2 people, you might say, well, why are they speaking at an event planning trade show, right? Like, they're not event planners. They're not, but they're entrepreneurs and they do it at the highest level. So all of us who are event planners or owners or corporate decision makers, we're all those people that have to incorporate everything that they do, right? We do it the same way, except now we also produce events on top of it. So we wanted to show, and we've always kind of incorporated this, is that it's about an entrepreneur. It's about the customer and the attendee, right? So a lot of the people who attend the show, the thousands of people that come, they're not all event planners. Some of them are like yourself. You have an agency, right? Some people work at like a Twitter or a BuzzFeed or a Google or an Ogilvy, and they might actually not have the title as event planner. People who plan events are human resource people. They're assistants to CEOs. They're marketing directors. They're community managers. So you really have to understand your audience, right? And so what was interesting was that people really wanted to hear from these kinds of people. We had Jason Pfeiffer from Entrepreneur Magazine. He's great. And he was so informative and so forth. So it's like all of those elements. And then we integrated, as on the panel discussions, a lot of top level event industry people that could speak to different things like wedding planners, corporate marketers, corporate producers, so there was always an integration of all of that.
I want to throw this out there because I think, I talked about Gary Vee and he was at the event. I just threw a picture of a screenshot of a photo or a video that I took last year. But this lady last year is one of the reasons that I owe for my success and killing it on LinkedIn. I thought she was great content.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk about Mario Armstrong from this year later, but this was such amazing thing. This is part of my content that I speak every day. I taught my kids stuff because they're trying to get on social media. Just amazing content, and I really appreciate your ability to bring together a really diverse pool and people that have surprised me every year. Because the year that I was there and I got that photo of Barbara Corcoran, I didn't attend that for Barbara Corcoran. I attended for Colin Cowie.
Yep.
Barbara Corcoran is the one who blew me away.
Right. And that's the interesting thing, right? You come to an event thinking you're coming for X, and then you leave with X plus Y, plus Y plus Y. And I think that that's the piece that differentiates an event from being an okay event to a great event, right? You're creating an experience that you're talking about for years to come. And that's the piece that people really need to integrate. And it doesn't get lost on virtual, right? We can still do those kind of engaging wow factors, like you just mentioned, Mario Armstrong. Like, how amazing was he? He's just a really inspirational, and he's a really great vibe and energy, and a really successful entrepreneur. And we're going to be working with him on producing a virtual event, because he produced his event in New York City in a room that he can't use anymore because it's not safe. So out of these kinds of experiences come other experiences, and that's what's really important about it. And I think you're muted.
Sorry, my coworker was walking by. So I thought Mario Armstrong was great because he had the most innovative background with his sneakerhead collection behind him. I thought that was great, and just sort of, all that kind of stuff, especially for the virtual environment, to give you ideas, not only on the content, but people doing different ways, being exposed to seeing different things. Like for me, maybe you don't have a really pretty attractive background thing. And Mary Armstrong, I think he's a big deal, the Never Settle show, all that good stuff. But I love not only the fact that he had the sneakers behind them, but he used that as part of his learning piece. Mm-hmm. I thought, there's so much to take away from that. So again, kudos, really, really great innovative content. And that surprise factor that you're talking about is something that's why I go to an event. That's why, if I didn't want to be surprised, I'd just go to YouTube all day and seek out the content, that I learned. If I didn't want to network people, I just stay home, right? You go to events to do these things. Talk to us about the networking. How did you guys facilitate networking? I know I had some challenges with the HIO app and from day to day. I know you switched from one technology day one to another technology day two to another technology day three. Talk to us about some of those challenges and how you sort of maneuvered through it.
Sure. So, day one, day two, and day three, we're not supposed to ever be on the same platforms. We actually had different elements per day. But day one, what happened was, it was day one and people were trying to register, and there were thousands of people, in essence, going into a hub at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we basically overloaded it, is the explanation, where, X amount of people got through. So I think like 80% were able to get in, and 20% experienced maybe an error message and so forth. And, that platform has handled events for thousands upon thousands of people, even larger than our event. And they, the answer was that they never had that happen. So the reality is that for day two, we could have stayed on that same platform. They just had to, I guess, in essence, update their server, if you will. But we weren't sure. And so I think what's really important when you're not sure is to go with your gut. And so my partner said, I'm not comfortable staying on a possible issue, right? So to stay where we were, we knew what it was. We had spent months creating the content and like the perimeters and the designs and all these really cool elements. But the reality was we didn't know if the user experience would be what we envisioned it to be. So we completely jumped ship and we said, okay, everyone knows Zoom, let's do it. And we brought everybody on that. Now, I think in hindsight, that was the right move, because at the end of the day, we wanted to deliver content and we wanted to allow people to experience this live and engaging educational aspect. That whole day, we were funneling people in and out and so forth. And so it was really important that when we had the Jamie Kern-Limas and the Daymond Johns and the Jen Groovers and all of the really massive speakers, that there was a smoothness to getting them on and being able to talk to them live. And also from a user perspective, that there would not be any issues with anyone coming in. So we did make that decision, and it wasn't an easy decision because, like I said, it was months of work that we were basically saying, okay, we're just going to put to the side and we're going to make a leap. But at the end of the day, it was about making sure that everyone had the experience that we envisioned. And so we did do that leap. On day 3, that was basically another system which allowed people to engage with the vendors, which are the booths. And so that was always going to be a different platform. And so that was intentional. And then with HIO, HIO has been a partner, a sponsor for, 2 years now. And last year, I don't know if you attended the VIP networking lounge for HIO, but it was on the main floor in the back of the main room behind the middle lounge. And there was a HIO lounge and allowed you to network in person. And so when the world changed and when things went virtual, HIO also had to pivot their platform to allow it to be used in a virtual perspective through the computer and allow you to do one-on-one meetings and 1-to-4 meetings. And that's been a process. We've been working with them since probably April to kind of like troubleshoot and just see like the experience and so forth. So, HIO was ready to go, and ultimately they were doing some back end, in essence, like tweaks, and that affected the experience that we had. And they were obviously very disappointed because they had worked for months to basically create this experience so that the attendees could enjoy it, because HIO is a great networking app. And literally with their back end development team, they were in and we were going in and it didn't work. And so we basically shut it down for day 2 and we reintroduced it on a softer level for day 3. And what we're going to do, because that experience wasn't able to really be accomplished in the way that we wanted, is we're going to actually be doing curated networking events with HIO for the attendees that came to the trade show. And so it'll give them another element to be able to engage with it. So although it didn't happen, how we wanted it in our mind, we're going to bring it back and say, hey, you know what? This didn't happen that day because they were doing some tweaks, but it's okay. Look what they did now, and bring them back and experience it.
No, I think that's amazing, because I think one of the challenges for event producers, and I've been a part of these conversations, both with Rhinebrook Events, with my MPI chapter, with people in producing events and figuring out how they're going to do things. I mean, on the sort of the dark end, everything from because of the pandemic limits. And when you think about events, we have the fun events and we have the not so fantastic ones. So, I've been a part of live streaming a funeral because we needed to make sure that all of the family would get a chance to see, and there was limits on who could be there. On the fun end, figuring out how to bring for a global event, how to bring people together and have multiple aspects, and what platforms do you use? And it's such a challenge because everybody wants to sell their product, but at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out what's going to actually work. And there's a reason that so many people are using things like YouTube and Zoom, because they've been tested by fire. People are used to them. There's a comfort level.
They're simple.
Yeah, and they work, right? There's just those basic elements, but we're in this continual struggle. I really liked the ability the first day on that platform. What was the platform on the first day?
So it's called Conference on Demand, and it was created from Automatic Media. They've been around for 20 years. They're like true event producers, and they do like a lot of tech and virtual. So their experience is amazing. And actually what we're going to do, because some people did have, like we said, the issue on day 1.
The only issue I ran into was in the morning. It was a little tough to get on, but once I got on, there was just like one meeting where I think it was being broadcasted in the wrong slot. That was the only issue I had, but I thought the chat function was really great with Conference on Demand. I thought the fact that I could toggle, so I could go with my feet, so to speak, just like a real live conference. So I could go from one session that maybe I didn't love all the panelists to another one where I did. And there was one particular panel, of course, I'm going to forget it now, but there was one where it was like 3 entrepreneurs on. I loved, like, there were some panels that I really loved, and the ability jump from one to another, because it was one of those situations where I was like, all right, I'm not really, you know, I kind
Exactly.
of stuff. I'm going to jump over here. So the ability to do that, just like at a real live event,
Mhm.
like, I walked into the wrong, this track isn't for me.
Right.
Let me go over here. I thought that was amazing.
Well, that was the intent. The intent was to have like multiple tracks, so that if you went into sales and marketing and you said, oh, you know what, I'm not really feeling the sales and marketing, or I already know what they're talking about, let me go to tech. So we did do staggered tracks and tiers, so it's similar to, like you said, the different rooms. But what we're going to do and what we're excited about is we are repurposing the content, and we are actually putting it back onto Conference on Demand, and we're going to be inviting all of the users to come back in and be able to tune in to all of the panels that they may have seen, and maybe the ones that they didn't. Because keep in mind, if you were watching it live, right, Cameron, you would only have been able to be in one track at a time, unless you, like you said, you toggled or you jumped, but you would have missed other elements. So what we're doing, and I think that this is a great thing that came out of it, is we're going to basically allow people to come back in and review it. That was not the intent originally. It was you come in and you watch it, and then the event's over. But, you know, because we made some adjustments and so forth, I think that it's a really positive piece that came out of it. And now it'll give extra value to the users, right? Like if you want to go in and you want to listen to, you know, Tim Prempton, founder of Butler Hospitality, let's say, and you want to listen to it and then you want to listen to it again, now you'll have that ability. You wouldn't have had that ability before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, that ability with a virtual event and also with a live event, right? So that's, you know, the sort of the future is like there was, you know, we're always at these live events. You know, I think about like MPI, World Education Congress. So you travel and there's so much content because they want to bring, you know, this very large umbrella of people together. So there's inevitably content that you can't see. Oh, favorite speaker, somebody that you know that's speaking,
Exactly.
you want to, you know, digest this content over here. What do I do? So having that ability to go back and not miss that content while attending the live event and getting the interpersonal, you know, live, you know, sitting in your seat next to you. Oh, what do you do? How are you doing? You know, while the, you know, the things are being shuffled or there's a moment. I think those kind of things are the things that you want. One of the disappointing things I remember from the conference was, you know, I'm there on the third day and I remember Mario, I'm gonna ding Mario a little bit, but he was like, oh, hey, don't do networking here. You know, networking is going to happen later. And I was like, a little bit like, oh, come on, dude. Like, you know, let people talk. But I also understood, like, you know, you want the conversation to stay on point. But having those live events are what I live for, you know, in the event. So I'm looking for those opportunities. I know a lot of it you wanted to happen over on HIO, but I think the challenge with the HIO platform, which I'm interested in how they're going to develop, make it better, is like, all right, so we got to have hosted tables, because why am I going to this table? Why am I starting a table, or all that kind of stuff? I think those things, you know, in the curated content that you're talking about is really exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, we've done it. We did a few events prior to actually our trade show on HIO. I did a ton of networking events in July and August and September, and it was spot on, perfect. It was like no issues, right? We could do curated table conversations. I could sit at a table and say, you know what, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait and see who those 3 people are. And once you got to the 4 people, the table closed off. And then let's say one person left, someone else could jump in. So it was a really great engagement. And I definitely highly recommend it. Although, you know, I understand from like a foot forward perspective that it didn't really allow people to engage as we had wanted to. And that's unfortunate, but we're going to bring it back with other events. And so that'll allow people to really focus on that. And then also from, you know, from the day 2 with the keynotes, we really wanted people to stay focused on what they were talking about. Those speakers that we had, I mean, if you put them all in a room, it was like $1 million of like content.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like it was, we would never have been able to get them in reality in the real world. And, you know, I always say that because their schedules would have been crazy. They would have been flying. Some of them were in California. Some of them were upstate New York. Some of them were on quarantine because, you know, their family has high risk and so forth. So we were able to really create that. And we wanted people to really digest it and listen to it. That was really important because they were sharing stuff that wasn't just a cookie cutter speech. Literally, when we were asking Daymond questions, you know, we were asking him questions that we felt the audience would want to know. Same thing with the other speakers. Like they really crafted it based on who was in our audience and who were they speaking to. Like Jamie Carlina jumped on, like a week before the event. We were working with her, we were talking
it out, by the way. Let me just say that. I mean, her story was amazing. If you haven't had a chance to check out Jamie Carlina, because again, this is somebody that was a surprise. I had no idea. I am not a or whatever of makeup, and I had no idea what it makeup was or it cosmetics was before her presentation. But listening to her talk about being rejected by QVC and then end up selling out on QVC, I mean, I just thought that was amazing. And then just the idea of real women and her sticking with her guns against like professional advice from successful people, I thought that was amazing.
And I think that that's what we wanted people to like really dive into and experience, was that, from a Jen Groover who talked about like family backgrounds and like, how do you get more out of life, to, for example, like a Heather Monahan who was working in, a major corporation thinking that she was going to be the next boss. And then her boss gave it to their child, and she was bumped out, right? To someone like a Heather Mitzfili, who was a pro, Olympian soccer player, who was literally told, you're never going to come back onto the field. And she said, you know what? I don't care what you say. I'm going to work as hard as I can to really be successful. And she shared, those ups and downs. All of them did, right? And then you go on to a Jamie who, in reality, we had been speaking to her for an event that we had done virtually. We had 42 speakers in August. We did a 10-day event challenge, which was curated by us and produced by us. And we had 42 high-level speakers. And we had thousands of people attend, and it was all about giving back to the community. It was all about education, insight, inspiration. And we had reached out to her actually for that. And the timing was just, we didn't have a big turnaround time. And so it didn't work for her schedule. She also was having a baby. So long story short, we were able to kind of bring her on, which was an exciting element because her story is like really a true American story, right? It's an entrepreneurial dream. You want to be able to say, look, I invested into this. I stuck with my guts. I focused on my business, and here's where it is today. $1.2 billion cash acquisition is insane. And then there were people like a Tim Story, who is so inspirational. I mean, he's a coach. He is a mentor. He coaches people who, like a Kanye West and like a Robert Downey Jr., and he's friends with Oprah. I mean, there's so much knowledge there, and to hear his insightful experience and to share what he did from like a very genuine and authentic perspective. And then you have someone like Mario, who, is, a host, and he's an entrepreneur, and he's a creator. And even when, my team and I had spoken to him for the first time, we were in his closet, right? Like with all the shoes, and he's pulling up and he's saying, look, I'm not wearing these shoes until I hit this goal. He's doing actionable, tangible goal setting. And it's in an interesting way. So reward, right? When we talk about from a therapy perspective, it's positive reward. He's literally creating his experiences with positive rewards. And that's something that people probably don't apply every day, but it's something that makes people feel good about themselves, right? You do well, you're successful, you close this deal, you get this pair of sneakers, whatever that looks like to you. But that's kind of how he was really.
No, I love that. And anybody who's read like something like Atomic Habits, that idea of, rewarding yourself for good behavior, right? And creating these habits of success. There's so many different ways to do it. Putting the fruit bowl out so that you're walking past it versus having the candy bowl out, right? At work or wherever, right? I think those things are amazing. Yeah.
And those are like the little wins, right? Like right now we're in a pandemic, right? The world is not what it used to look like, and it might never be what it was before. It might be a whole new, perspective. But the reality is like those little wins are the things that get people through the day. That's what helps an entrepreneur, an owner, a planner, a marketing director, anybody, any type of industry get through that day, is those little wins, because each little win gets you to the bigger win. And that's what's really important. So like I was mentioning, we really wanted those keynote speakers to really be heard. And we wanted people to be able to embrace it and listen. And we created a workbook, which I don't know if you got to see, but everyone received the workbook, which had like a notepad in it where you can like literally scratch down notes, because we wanted people to capture those important pieces that resonated with each person. And that was really important.
Absolutely. And I thought that was a great digital element. I enjoy so much when people personalize things for events, create Facebook. So you had a lot of those elements of seeing people and bringing that to the tangible. What things, are you going to tweak for the next virtual event? What are things that you're super excited about bringing to people that, are fans of the expo and of these type of events?
So I think that there's a couple different things that, we're focusing on. First off, we are focusing on right now dealing with clients who are looking to do like employee engagements and activations and educational events, as well as holiday parties. They're not going to look like they did before because they're not going to be in person, but we're really focusing on delivering positive, customized experiences for all of our clients. So that's something that's like a big piece of what we do is, producing events for other people, and they don't all look the same. So each event looks completely different. It's based on what the vision is of that particular client and their needs, right? What's their goal? What's their why? So that's what we'll do for each different person. Regarding the trade show, obviously we have it in next October, and I don't know what will be in shape-wise in the sense of like the world perspective. But if things are better, we'll be doing an in-person event coupled with a virtual, and that virtual will be able to allow people, and at least the way I would like it to be allowed is, everyone can hear the speakers, and maybe they'll be able to walk the virtual, walk the trade show floor from like watching it, but it'll look very different. It'll be a hybrid of the two, and we're very excited because as things kind of progress, we can kind of still incorporate more and more. So that's something that we're doing. And then we're also working on a lot of educational series. So we're going to be, like I mentioned, we're doing our community, and in our community, we're going to have spotlight speakers. We're going to be having like different channels that'll teach people, oh, you want to learn how to cook with a chef. Okay, great. We'll have a chef and their company in there. You want to talk to someone about something that's coming up, like you need, for example, you want to do some creative ideas. You want to do like a virtual photo booth. We'll have elements of that. We're going to have a lot of ways to engage people, and that's something that we're focusing. So our focus is all about events community and bringing people together. So that's stuff that we're working on now. And then on top of that, the feedback that we got from the trade show was people loved the education. They thought that the wide breadth of speakers was very, very powerful. And so we're going to continue with that because that's something that people really need. They all learned. It was all about takeaways and giving back. So I was pretty happy with that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think there's some things, and I'd love to pitch some ideas that I think folks that are producing events can use all together. I think, one of the things that I really regret from 2019 was not figuring out my ticket so that I could take a picture with Gary Vee, because I love my photo with Barbara Corcoran. So in the virtual world, I think that presents some options. So having that ability to be in a room, for 5 minutes or 2 minutes with Daymond John and having that VIP ticket to do that. I think that's something.
We did actually have that.
Did you? I didn't even know.
We did. And I think, we had some people take advantage of it. It wasn't like in the thousands or hundreds by any means. So we did actually have that. It was basically like the ability to come in and ask him a question and do like an intimate Q&A. And if that's something that people want, that's something that we can curate. So like, for example, I was mentioning we did this event in August with these 42 speakers. And I think in the beginning, I mentioned that the intent of this past year's trade show was to have Daymond John and Jesse Itzler. Jesse Itzler is the founder of Zico Water. He basically founded Marquis Jets. He sold it to Warren Buffett. He's like an entrepreneur on a different, he's crazy with the ideas that he comes up with. And he's also like a guy who only eats fruit until noon. So he has like all these crazy elements. Now, on top of who he is, he's married to Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely is the founder of Spanx.
Yep.
So they're like a very interesting dynamic couple. And so we actually took him this year to August, and we used him at our virtual 10-day event, actually. And what we did with that experience was we allowed people to ask him questions, and we allowed this one-on-one, very, very intimate experience. And that was something we did. So what I think is most important to anybody listening in is that you can create whatever experience you want. You just need to have the right partners or the right connections to be able to do that. So if it's something that you want to do, if you have a corporation and you're like, I need an educational, inspirational person, sure. Like we're going to be doing things with Kevin Harrington. Kevin Harrington is, the first shark of Shark Tank. He's like the original shark, and he's a very big speaker, right? So you can kind of integrate whatever elements that you feel that would be important for your team or the company. And that's important to define, because I talk to people every day and I'm like, what do you want to do for your event? And they're not sure. And that's the really big thing, is define what your why is and then come up with a plan to execute it, right? Who are those people to do it?
I think that this is so really, because it's going to force our creativity. And I think, there's some people that are like, no, as soon as we can come back to real life, the real world, all this. Listen, virtual is here to stay. It was already very prevalent. The logistics alone. I mean, you talked about it. Why are we going to prevent somebody that can't afford the hotel and the travel or the time to this event, both from an attendee perspective and from a speaker perspective? Going back to Gary Vee, he talked about, attending an event as a hologram. I think, pushing the edges of what we can do as event professionals is really important, and creating these curated experiences, one-on-one experiences. I think the live event thing, listen, going through the expo floor, it's going through the photos from the expo, so I can't show them all because I want to focus on what you were saying and the content of it. But the idea that you can be there, whether it's a marketing company that provides all these things that you can send out to your customers or giveaways. There's just no replacement for the look and feel of that. There's ways to get around with that, with sending out, boxes to attendees, and all that kind of stuff.
And that's what we've been doing, actually, is that the reality is, listen, we're creatures of human, we like companionship, right? We like to be around people. That's never going to change. We're humans. We're not supposed to be like separated on islands, right? So naturally we want to come together. But while we can't, what we need to say is, what's the best thing I can do to provide my service and to help my community? And that's really like where we're at. So for example, we're doing all these different events and we're really focusing on it. So I just spoke to like one of our big corporation clients that, I've worked with for 8 years. And she said, look, our 401ks were cut. Our staffing was cut. Our new hires were cut. I don't have the same budget that I had then. And so some people might say, well, then you know what? It's not worth putting in the effort. But the reality is I want to keep that relationship. So whatever that looks like, we're going to curate an experience that's going to be high level, like in the sense of execution. It might not incorporate 20 different things that maybe in our minds we initially thought, but we're going to do that. And I think that that's what's the most important, is do whatever you can do. It's okay. You don't have to do the most grand, but you can partner with the right people or go to someone and say, hey, you know what? I'm not strong on this. Like, I don't know how to get in front of my target market, but I need to drive business, right? We're doing these, it's called like challenges, and we're creating these challenges. They could be 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. It's kind of like what Tony Robbins does, where he has like an immersive event, right? And we'll bring together education, or you can bring introducing product that you have. So you provide a service and you want to get in front of people. So there's creative ways of kind of encapsulating that. It might not look like what we're used to because the world's not what we used to. Right. But if
I love that. And looking at what people have done, not creating the wheel. I mean, you look at somebody like Tony Robbins, he's been in this space because he understands, there's limits to an in-person event. He does in-person events. He kills it.
And he said he probably will never go back to doing it in person. He said that he's never been able to get in front of this amount of people. Like, think about that. Like, Tony Robbins, who filled stadiums, is basically saying, this is amazing. He built like a 7 million home studio. So that's like not the norm, right? But you can create your own studio. You don't have to have like this dramatic space, right? You can have a great background or a great room that you're in, or a creative background. And agencies, like, we're working with companies that are teaching them how to do that, right? because people
I
don't.
love it. And you think about like the events that you put together, and you look at the vendors, the folks that are in your expo, you know, they're on the trade floor. You know, they put these amazing setups together. It always surprises me. And then you might go to a website. Not everybody, but I'm talking about they put these really extremely creative, fantastic displays together. But then you go to the website, and you know that same creativity is not there. So understanding, like, if you're creative, you can put this content out and it can be accessible to a lot of people. So helping it, you know, getting in touch with you, getting that message out, putting out, because you guys do a great job with that. I mean, I don't want to get off this and not really just big you up. You guys do a great job with marketing and getting that message out there. I'm always super impressed. I know we've hit on some things. I don't know that we really touched on that whole message that we talked about before we jumped on the call, that I know you wanted to leave people. You know, we talked about people getting kicked in the mouth, but getting back up and getting into this, I want to leave people with that. And then if you can follow that up with how people can get in touch with you, who do you want to connect with, and who do you think should be getting in touch with you?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, the reality is we've all were kicked in the mouth, right? March came, April came, our businesses were stopped. We were told that we can't do in-person events. We can't do what we know. For us, for example, like I mentioned, we rep like a ton of spaces in the city. So all of those were closed. So in essence, you're kicked in the mouth, you're pushed down. And then the question is, how do you react? So it's hard, but you have to push through it. I mean, I don't know who's familiar with Mel Robbins, but it's the 5-second rule, right? 5 seconds, you can push through the pain, you can push forward, and you can get out to the next thing. It's really the fear that gets in your mind that really stops us from proceeding and moving forward. And that's something that, you know, not everyone can get through on their own. Sometimes you need to turn to your partner or your staff or your clients or even like your family and say, like, how do I get to that next step? But if you keep moving and you play in the game, right, you don't sit on the sideline, you'll be able to succeed. Because the people that are going to sit this out are never going to come back in. I feel very strongly about that. And even if what you're doing right now doesn't look like what it looked like prior to March, that's okay. You might be adjusting and adapting, right? We're all chameleons. We all have transferable skills. You know, that in-person event that you were doing might look like now your virtual event. You know, you might be adjusting. You might go into a different realm of what you want to do in the sense of like your job market. That's okay too. The most important thing is that once you're pushed down, you don't stay down. And how do you get up is by you leverage your relationships, you reach out to your contacts, you speak to your clients, you talk to your community, and you strategically align with people. At the end of the day, we're only as good as the people that we're with and our partners. And so that's something that's really important. And, you know, like I mentioned several times throughout this, like we're a community, and if there's anything that we can do, you know, for anyone tuning in, if someone needs help with like their digital marketing, that is actually a new element that we launched 2 months ago, because we realized that people didn't have content, and what you need is getting content in front of people. So that's something that we're doing. We're consulting with companies that are saying, well, how do I take what I'm strong at and really focus on that? Because some people's businesses were very, very diversified, and all of that stuff is not really relevant at the moment. So kind of honing in. So, you know, identifying your why. And then also creating event experiences. My partner and my team always say it's 80% the experience, it's 20% the tech. It's all about what you create. And that's what's really important, because you could go on any Zoom, right? And you can create an event, or you can go on Zoom and you can really create an event. And what differentiates that, right? What's the engagement? What's the experience? How do you do your intros? Like, Cameron, you're not on with like a blank screen behind you. You have pink and you have purple, and you made it all fancy. You had an intro reel. All that stuff creates an event experience. And those are things that not everybody knows. They don't. And that's okay. We're not expecting that everyone knows, right? We all are learning and going through this together. Some people learn quicker. Some people aren't as comfortable learning. They just want to outsource it. So I think that those are the things that are really important to people. And I mean, if anyone wants to connect and is interested in doing any, like I said, a virtual event experience, a summit, they want to do a networking event, they want to join our events community, you know, there's a myriad of things that we're going to do. I'm happy to connect with each and every one of anyone tuning in. We can talk about it. You know, even if you just want to connect, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can go to our website, which is emrgmedia.com, and you can send in an email request that way. But we're here and we're going to stay here because at the end of the day, we're adapting. And that's what's critical, is how do you adapt? And then who do you want to adapt with?
All right, that's amazing. I think the message around getting into something new, pivoting, I got this a little bit early on into the process, this message of you may enjoy what you're doing now more than you were enjoying before. When you say those words from Tony Robbins talking about, I'm not going to go back to it. You know, you will be surprised if you get into something new and what you actually enjoy more than what you were doing before.
And I have to just say one thing, sorry, just really quickly. Like, you might not enjoy this right now. It might take you a month to get to that enjoying point. That's okay. It's basically the fear and the resistance, right, that pushes us from doing it. Like, if you had said to me in January that I would have been a host and interviewed Daymond John and 15 other keynote speakers, I would have said to you, you're out of your mind, right? But the reality is there was a need, and so I had to do it. And I think that that's, you know, they say that when the pain of being where you are is worse than the pain of where you want to go, you make the change.
That's awesome. And I'm assuming you had some good time doing what you were doing in terms of interviewing these folks.
No, I liked it. But if you had told me back then that I was going to do it, you know, I had an hour with Daymond. That's a long time. You know, we're doing an hour, you know, but the reality is that was from, I think we started, I had to get on the air at like 7 in the morning. We had to do a mic check at 6:30, and we went till 5:30. You know, it was a long.
You know, I think the thing is that, you know, you're going to have a lot of eyes on you. You know, this is a big player. You know that every stage counts, but you get, you know, I'm sure you're interviewing a lot of folks, so you get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit by little bit. The LinkedIn address for Erica is down below. If you're on YouTube, you can go down there. If you're on Facebook, it's off to the side there. I encourage you to connect with her. She's amazing. The company EMRG Media does such a great job of getting the word out and doing the marketing thing. Between you and Mario, you guys are just impeccable at that. Thank you so much for being on the show with me. I really appreciate you. I'm going to let you have the final word and say goodbye to people, and I'll let you say just how you want folks to get in touch with you one more time, and then I'll play us off.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Cameron, for even thinking of having me on board and speaking. It was definitely a pleasure. And anything that we can do for you, just let us know. And, you know, like I said, we're here for the community in any capacity. And like I said, even if it's a question that you're not sure that we can help you, maybe it's not something that we could do, but we can definitely suggest or recommend. And I think that that's the biggest piece, right? Is even if you don't know who that person is that can help you, just reach out. Try. You're not going to lose anything from doing that. It's literally 2 seconds of your time. And another thing that I would just throw out, you know, if people are trying to build up their relationships in Rolodex, is send 3 emails to people a day. It could be a LinkedIn message. It could be, you know, you look them up and you just email them out, or you DM them. The worst case that's going to happen is they're going to say no, and you're no further off than where you started from. So I think that that's a piece that you just have to dive into, and it's okay not to know. You can grow and you can adapt, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're any less than somebody else. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Cameron, for having us.
Can you add one note, because I think along those same lines, because I think that's great advice, and I love this biz dev kind of piece, because that is okay. Like, in essence, like biz dev, right?
Okay.
Talk about Mario Armstrong and how he is sending out videos. I'll let you deliver that one. Do you remember that piece?
Yeah, no. So basically, Mario is, in essence, working on a project to launch in the virtual sense, from what he had done, you know, in the real world, like I said, in person. And what he did was, and he and I had spoken about it, is he had to put together a brand deck. And so what he did was he created a brand deck and he put a video to it, which, if you think about it, no one really does that. It's very innovative, and that captures brand's attention. So he's been doing that and kind of doing like a special twist on it. And I think that that's really important when you're trying to stand out from the crowd, because now people are getting inundated with new messages. But at the other hand, people are where you think they are. They're home or they're in their office. They're not out socializing. They're not like with a busy schedule. They're pretty much not traveling, right? So if you take that effort to say, curate, you know, a message every day, it could be 3 people, because that's like a small deliverable that you can obviously achieve. 3 people over, let's say, each month, just to round it, is 30 days. That's 90 people, 90 times 12. You know, over a course of a year, you're at to like 700-800 people. So if you think about it like that, each little reach out can be really impactful. And you don't know where that's going to go, right? You might say, oh, I think I'm going to do this with, as an example, with Mary Armstrong, and it winds up being X plus Y. So you just need to throw it out there and say, here, I'm here. This is what I do. Maybe I can help you. Maybe I can't right now. I mean, I'll give you a different example. Ryan Stewman, he owns Hardcore Closer. Like I was following him for a while. I thought he was like ridiculous in his capacity of sales and his story. I mean, he went from owning a business to getting into jail to, you know, rebuilding a business. I mean, he has like a really, really crazy story, and he writes books, and he's like a very high level salesperson. He creates masterminds, and, you know, Sydney from our team reached out to him, and she was able to get him on our stage. And I wouldn't have thought that we would have gotten him. So the reality is you just never know, but you'll never get the results if you don't try. I think that that's really important.
Yeah, I love this message. It was very humble. Thank you again so much for doing this. It was so impactful. I think all the stuff that you're saying.
My pleasure.
And looking forward to the future of the expo and everything that EMRG Media has to offer. Thank you very much for being on the show. Again, I'm going to go back. All right, just say thank you, and we're going to get off this thing. I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you, everybody for watching. Big shout out to Maria Zavala, who she was saying the last time that we actually met in person was back in 2019. So at the expo. So very cool to have that opportunity.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again, Cameron. We appreciate anyone who wants to get in touch with me. You can either send me a message on LinkedIn or, you know, email into our website. So it's emrgmedia.com. And I hope to see everyone soon. And anything I could do or any questions I can answer, just let me know. I'm here to help.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.